you remember in the previous session, we talked about what is this entity framework ORM. So we said that what is EF, what is ORM. We talked about, why is this thing called as context, and we talked about, the how do you say, the influence of domain-driven development thinking on entity framework. That's what that word context came from. We talked about the Fluent Interface API model builder, and we showed a simple demo of database first, right? So we discussed about code first and database first, and we also demoed out the database first. Now in today's session, we will demo out code first. So if you remember in the previous session, I said database first means your database is created manually, and from entity framework, you connect to that database and you do your CRUD operation, right? Now let us come to the second thing, where the developer says that I have defined all the structure in my code, the DB structure in my code, and when my code runs, at that time, go ahead and create the database. So for that, what we need to do is so you can see here, this is my, so just to quickly revise, so this was our customer class, right? And this was the entity framework context code. And in this, if you remember, we had this on model creating, and in that we had written this mapping where we said that this customer is mapped to the TBL customer table, right? And at this moment, if you see this connection string is pointing towards EF core, right? So that is the database, where everything is happening. So what we did in this, we created the customer object, we created the context object, and we did save changes. This add was in memory, and the save changes was a physical commit. Okay. So now, and what was happening over here is in this EF database, EF core database. So you can see here, this is my EF core DB. In this, the TBL customer was already created, right? So now what I'll do is I'll go and I will delete this table, and let us see by code first. So by code first, it should create the tables automatically. So I'm going to go and delete these tables out here. Drop failed. Why? Is a reference by a foreign key. Okay. Okay, let me go and delete this. Fine. So now in this EF core database, we have nothing at this moment. There are no tables created, right? And we want to use code first from this console application. So in order to do code first, what we need to do is we need to go ahead here in the context, and in the context we have a database object. So we need to go and access this database object. You can see here my code on the screen. So you need to go to this database object, and you need to say here, ensure that this is created. I like this approach. If you see your previous entity framework 6, code first was by default, and it was really horrible. Why? Because majority of the community, they are database first guys. So they want to create their database separately. They want to do versioning of the script separately, and so on, right? So by default, when code first was enabled, it was really creating problem. So this is nice. Here by default, it is database first. And if you want to do it, then you will call this ensure created. So now what will happen out here is, if you see at this moment, again, just to iterate, you can see that there are no tables on the database, right? So we expect that this will create a table on the database, right? So I'm going to go and run this console application. Remember that in this whole course, I'll be using console application so that we only focus on entity framework. Because if I try to use MVC and so on, we will lose the focus. So you can see here my code is running. So we are first going and setting the ID, we are setting the name, we are setting the code, right? And now you can see on the screen, I'm creating the object of context, and I'm saying that please ensure that the database is created. So you can see database.ensure created. Let us quickly go and check, has he created the database, right? Let's tables. So let's go and just check. Can you see that? I hope everybody can see my screen. You can see that the TBL customer table has been created. So that ensure created, helps us to implement code first in EF core, right? And now that the table is created, so we can go ahead, we can add the object, and we can say save changes. Now you can see that there is an exception on the screen, and let us try to understand this exception. If you see the exception, it says I cannot insert this ID into identity column. So that means that, when I said ensure the database is created, the table is created, what he did is, he actually saw that this is an ID, and this ID, he went ahead and he created an identity column on it. While if you see in my code, I'm specifying a value to it. So now what is happening is he's complaining, saying that in the database it is identity and you're trying to set a value here. So let us quickly go to a TBL customer and let us check that has he created this identity. So you can see here I have opened the thing, and you can see I'm highlighting right out there this identity is yes. So I can just zoom. Okay, there it is. So you can see this identity specification is yes. So somehow we now need to tell SQL Server, or I'm sorry, to Entity Framework, that no, this is not an identity. Please make this as a simple primary key, but not as an identity, right? So let us see how we can do that. So for that, what we need to do is we need to go and put an attribute. So this is the attribute out here. This attribute says, so I'll go and I'll just put this attribute out here. So this attribute says that this customer ID is not generated automatically. So you can see database generated option is none. If you see the other options out here, you will find that there is identity, there is computed, right? So at this moment, I'll say, no, this is none, right? So there it is. So now I hope that this time it should go and add the record. So what I will do is, again, I'll delete this table because this table is created by identity, and we just want to ensure that it creates a table without identity, right? So let us go ahead here. Again, I'm running the application, you can see. So there I go and I run the ensure created, right? So you can see the ensure created has ran. So now let us go ahead and let us check on the tables, what is the design. So I'll go and I'll check in the design, and I hope so that I should find, you can see now at this moment, the identity specification is no. You can see this no out here. So that means now this is as per our, as per our need. Only also you can see that there are some bad things. For example, can you see nvarchar max? That's something I don't want to see there. We will see how to fix this data type later on, right? But now at least I should not get the identity error. So let us go ahead, add the object in memory. Let us go ahead and click on save changes. So you can see now it is working. The save changes has been executed, and in the TBL customer, we can see the record has been saved, right? So this is code first. So to implement code first, we need to use this syntax, context.database.ensure that it is created, right? So guys, any questions on how to implement code first in EF Core? So one is we saw database first in the previous class, and this is code first. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type on your chat. So if there is any other value column, will it assume it has an identity? No, it will not assume anyone else as an identity. This is only for the customer ID. He has done it, because actually what happened is this was a key. If you remember, actually this was a key, right? Previously this was a key, and because of that he chose him as identity. So he will not go and take any other column as identity. Right, so any questions? Okay. Now yeah, let me know if you have any questions how to implement code first in EF Core. Yes, it checks that all the tables are created. Yes, you cannot implement how do you say, half database first and half code first. At least to my knowledge, we cannot say, okay, some of the tables are code first and some of the tables are, it will just go and check everything. Okay, so I can see there are some more questions here. Yes, okay. How can we implement one to many, and how can we implement many to many and many to one, right? So that's my next thing in my class. So we'll do that. Um, let us go ahead and talk about how to do one to many. So now that the question has already come here, right? So let us talk about how to do this one to many and many to many and so on, right? On one to one. So what I will do is, so now let us say, let me go ahead and create an address class. So if we have a customer, in that customer, I will take up all the questions, money, don't worry, So I will just go ahead with this one to many demo, and then I will take up all the questions. So let your questions come in. I will complete one topic. I will again go back and look at your questions. I will answer them. So let us try to implement one to many relationship here. And so means one TBL customer has many addresses record, right? So I'm going to go here and say class address, right? So here's a class address. And in this, let me create a address ID, and let me create an address ID, or I can say an ID also, right? And address text, an address one, phone number, and so on, right? So now, in order to create a one-to-many relationship, you just have to follow your object-oriented principles. You need to go ahead and implement an aggregated collection. An aggregated collection means, over here I will say now, this is a list of address. So you can see now what I've done is, inside this customer, I have created a list of address, right? And that defines the one-to-many relationship, right? So if I go ahead now, let me go ahead and drop all the tables. So let me go ahead and drop this table out here, and let us see that how this one-to-many relationship will shape up. So I'll go and delete this. So now, okay, so here it is. Okay, so this is my customer I'm adding, and to this customer, remember the addresses is a collection inside it. So I'll say addresses dot add a new address. So you can see one to many relationship. So one customer can have multiple address, and address one. Let us not put. Okay, let it be there. That's fine. Let me not put an ID column. Okay, let's. I think now it is. Let us do like this. This time, what we will do is, let us keep this identity on. So you can see that I have removed that database generated option. Okay, let us keep the option on. Let us see what happens. So this is address one. Let us check. So ADD1, let us see what happens. And I'm just saying save changes. I would like to see that how things spans up here. So you can see here, one customer has multiple addresses. Okay. And also we will need to give here the ID of the address. So must be one. One. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what happens here. So I'm going to go and run this one to many relationship. What we have done is, inside the customer object, I've created a list of addresses. So we are trying to address the one to many relationship. So I expect that there should be a TBL customer created, there should be a TBL address created, and there should be a foreign key and a primary key relationship between them, right? So I'm going to go here, and so here you can see customer object is created. Inside the customer object, we are adding an address object. Oh, there is a null exception. So this null exception is because if you see, so you can see that there is a null exception out there. So because this addresses collection which you see inside this customer is not initialized. So what we will do is, let us go ahead and create a constructor, and inside this constructor we will go ahead and we will create a list of address, right? So with that null exception will go off, right? Okay. So now let us go ahead and again run this. So again, that my application is running. I'm creating object of customer. I'm adding address to it, and I'm saying, okay, create the database. So there it is. So you can see now database has been created. Let us go ahead and see that what kind of database has been created. So first thing, we expect two tables out here. There it is. You can see that there is a TBL customer, and you can see that the other table he has named as address. If you see one table he has named as TBL customer, but the other table he did not name it as TBL address. Can anyone guess, why it is not TBL address? Why it is just address? Because, yes, can anyone guess that? You can see that he created TBL customer, but he did not create a TBL address. Because, any guesses? Yes. So if you remember, yeah, very nice, Sumit. So you can see in the on model creating, I just gave the definition of how the customer table will be created, right? But I did not give anything about the address table. So by default, he just took the class name, right? So that is fine for us. I think that is okay. But let us go ahead and see the relationship for now, right? So I will go ahead. I'll go to the design here. So this is a primary key customer ID. That is nice. Let's go to the address. And in the address, can you see that he has created one customer ID as a key? If you see in my model, in my customer model, there is no customer ID, but automatically because of that one-to-many aggregation, he detected it and he created it. Now, please note, you can do all this by manually. You can go ahead, you can create a database, you can create a table and then map it over here. So at the end of the day, it should end up with such kind of a foreign key relationship, right? So you can see he has created the things manually. So that means now this code should work. So I will go and just say add this, and I will say save changes. You can see again the same error. He says that this address ID, is it an identity? So yeah, let's do that. So let's again go ahead and let's say that this is not an identity. Actually, I was expecting something else, but that's fine. I was expecting something else. So I'll just say this is key, right? And so now let us rerun the application, and this time we should not get that automated, the identity error we should not get. So I'm going to go and run the application, and there it goes, add in memory, right? And save changes. So you can see now the save changes has ran successfully. And if you go to our SQL server, so if you see now, so this is select star from the customer. You can see that customer record. And if I say select star from the address table, I should see that. So you can see here, this is the customer ID 2, and for that customer ID 2, there is an address out there, right? So this is one-to-many relationship, right? So any questions, guys, on this one-to-many relationship? Okay, also I can see there are some questions, which have been asked here, and let me try to answer them. So I'll go at the top. So since this is a class implementing a table, I assume we can use this code to create dynamic columns. Okay, so are there any technical constraints for us? It is better to be calculation in control action and keep the column itself as static. Dynamic columns means you are saying that you want to go ahead and create dynamic fields in tables. Hassan sir, I'm not sure. So I don't know that. I think that would be very difficult with entity framework. So if you're saying that you want to go and create, why do you want to create dynamic columns on the tables? Let me try to understand this question. So this is a class implementing a table. Yes. So we have a customer class which is implementing a table, and I assume we can use this code to create dynamic columns. No, this code will not be able to create dynamic columns for you. That won't happen. So it means I cannot go and the mapping is done only once. So I didn't get the dynamic column part. This mapping out here is with a static class. It's a class which is fixed. You can go and change it. Yes, you can go ahead and you can change it. it will go ahead and alter the table. But like you cannot go ahead and say now create 10 columns and then create 12 columns. Means you cannot really go and create dynamic columns through the console application. Here I cannot go and add columns into it. That is not possible. But yes, it will go and alter the table. If you go ahead now and if you change, let's say let's say your address has address 1, if you put address 2, yes, it will go and update the table. So that is there. It will send alter syntax. Okay. So here it is. So here's one more good question, and I like this question. This question says that can we go ahead and do the same via the model builder? Very good question. Means what it says is that at this moment, if you see how the one-to-many relationship is done is defined by my class, means by a convention. Convention means what I did over here. I said that there is a customer class, and then I said inside that I have an addresses collection. This is by convention, right? And automatically Entity Framework understood that this is a one-to-many relationship. He went ahead, he created the foreign key and so on, right? But what if I want to I don't want to do it by convention. I want to do by using the model builder. Means through the model builder, I will take two classes and I will define their relationship, right? So yes, you can do via the model builder also. So for example, if you want to go ahead and define via the model builder, here is the example. You can do something like this. So remember, one is you can define the things via convention, or convention means the way you structure your aggregated components, your composite components, right? So like, one customer has multiple addresses and this address has only one phone. So by convention, he will go and create that one-to-many relationship. Or another one is you can be very explicit. You can say here, you can see model builder. I will say model builder. This code I have taken from the Entity Framework tutorial website. It's a very, very great website. Whenever you talk about Entity Framework, for past 8-9 years, they are creating tutorials only around Entity Framework. So must be you can have a look at it. So over here, this is the example which I've copy pasted from them, but we can go ahead and put it for us as well. So now here what we want is, we have an entity called as, we have, now this is a bit different. When you go via the model builder, look at it. We have an entity called as address, and it has only one customer, right? And in that customer, we have, and this customer has many, let me define this first. This customer has many addresses, you can see, right? And the foreign key here is the customer ID. So where is, okay, now for this, we also need to go and define some fields out here. Okay, you can see that these two things are absent. You can see now, very interesting here. This one here, remember there are two mapping code. This mapping code is to map the class with the tables, right? And this mapping code is defining one-to-many relationship with the address ones using the model builder thing. Now you can see here, I did not start with customer. I started with address. I said in this address has only one customer class or customer object. Okay. So in other words, what we need to do now is we need to say that this customer, this address has only one customer object. You can see now this is also termed as a navigation property. So means what? If I am on address, how can I navigate to its customer? By through this object. If I am on customer, how can I navigate to address? Via this addresses collection. So you can see now defined at both the ends. So now here I'm saying, so this has one customer, and this is this customer, right? And it has many addresses, and the ID. Okay, now we also need to go ahead and define an ID out here. So we need to say now here prop int customer ID. This is my foreign key. So I'll say now s dot customer ID. So you can do via two ways. Either you can go and just define that one-to-many relationship and it is done. It goes and creates the key. Or either if you say no, like I want to go and define by the model builder, so there it is. Address has one customer, and this one customer has many addresses, and the relationship is with this foreign key. So did that answer your question? Let me know. So the question was that rather than by the class design convention, I want to use the model builder. So this is the syntax of model builder. So remember, you can define by both the ways. So any questions, guys, on how to use this via model builder? Must be we can go and run and check this. So what I'll do is, let me go ahead again, and just for understanding sake, I will just delete the tables, and let's see that if this really works or not. The previous was code first by using the convention of the classes. Now this is the code first by using the model builder. So the question here is, which is good and which is bad? That's okay. So nice question. So basically, actually, I like the class convention, because at the end of the day, this is again a personal choice. The question here is that, so what is good? Is it good to go and define by using the class convention or by the model builder? First thing is, if you look at the concept of ORM says that it is a mapping between object-oriented world and the relational world. So in my object-oriented world, there can be aggregation, composition, association. So that I will go and I will map with my RDBMS. That's the goal, right? So I like that convention, the class convention thing. But the problem is when you have very complicated kind of relationship, it is very difficult by the class convention. It is very difficult to follow it. So when I see this model builder out here, now anyone can understand. This is like, as we said, right? It's a Fluent API. So this is very readable, right? So in the class convention, the problem is readability. If you are having, like, let us say, that day I saw that we had a patient, that patient had medication, that patient was assigned a doctor, that patient was assigned a nurse, and so on, then it was so difficult to read via the class convention. Then I found this model builder to be good, because in the model builders, anybody can understand this address has one customer, the customer has one phone number, and so on, right? So it really depends on how complex is your mapping. But I like the class convention, because if you just follow object-oriented programming, it will just go and create the table. But when you have too many relationships, then it is difficult to follow the class convention, right? So it's all up to you what you want to use, but I follow the class convention. So I'll go and I'll run this. Let us see that this is working or not. So there is an address. Ensure that we create the database. So that's where the database is also created. The save changes is also fired. So this will again give us the same output. So if you see here now, in the address, you can see that he has created this customer ID foreign key, right, as we discussed. And so that is the address data attached to customer ID, and that is the customer data, right? So any questions here on how to use the model builder to define one-to-many? So that's the source code which I'm flashing, the mapping code. So here is a question. It is so difficult to understand through model builder. Okay. Actually, it is very easy to understand through the model builder. So it is like speaking English, isn't it? Like, so this address has one customer, and that one customer has many addresses. I know at the first time it looks difficult, but once you start practicing, you will understand it. And second, what happens is in project, right? We actually don't write anything. So the first person writes the POC, he does a one-to-many mapping, and people just copy it. So for example, I have seen in my project, a lot of my developers who are juniors, right, what they do is they look at the past code, they copy that. So they say, okay, this is the patient mapping, and then they will take that patient mapping and do it with other tables. So I've seen normally people just copy paste from one DB context, put it over the other DB context, and go ahead. So must be you don't have to really remember it. You can just understand the structure. One code you write, people just reuse the same code again and again. Okay, now what about one-to-one relationship? What, like if I want to say one customer has only one address? Okay, so again, we can do via both the convention also, we can do via model builder also, right? So you can see in model builder, I will say something like this. So this whatever. For example, you can see here the example student has one student address with only one student, not with many, right? And this is the foreign key. So again, the same thing. So I will not do this example, but this is how the model builder looks like. And from the convention part, from the class convention, what I will do is I will write code something like this. So this is my class address, and this will be just, because it is now one-to-one, this will now become like this. So just one customer with one address, right? So any questions on one-to-many, one-to-one? If you have any questions, you can put down on the chat. I'm sorry. Okay, here is a question which has come. I'll take up this question. The question says that how can we fire direct SQL using entity framework? So if you want to fire direct SQL using entity framework, one is you can directly use this command here. You can see here context.database.execute SQL command. So what you can do is, if you want to go and fire a direct SQL, that is the code, context.database.execute SQL command. You can see that, and in this you can go and you can write your update query and so on. Okay. Right. So that's the execute SQL command. Okay. Now let us talk about updates. Updates and deletes. How can we do? So first thing is, if you want to do if you want to update anything, the first thing is that you have to go ahead and select that object, right? So to select the object, we go ahead and we use the link queue query. So we do something like this in entity framework. So this is the customer object. Let us say this is the object I want to update, right? So whatever is the object which I want to update, it will come in this. So we go ahead and we say customer EF context. So customer EF context is equal to new customer EF context, right? And we can go here and say, okay, EF context dot go to customers, right? So link queue query. So link queue query is written with this format. So the format is your normal flower. If you see your SQL, etc., they all follow the flower syntax. The flower syntax means it starts first with a from. So I will say here from X in this customers collection, right? Then it starts with a let. We don't have a let now, so we don't have a L. Then it starts with a O, which is an order by. At this moment also we don't want the order by. Then we have W, the where. So we'll say where, let's say X dot so from why is it so from X, this is EF customer is a DB set, so that is right. Why am I not getting the structure out? Oh, select. What is so wrong here in the DB context? In the DB context, okay, we have the, I can go ahead and comment this code for now. Let us go ahead and comment this code. Let's keep customer only. So this is customers. For now, let's comment this. Let's keep only one single object for now. Why is it giving me that error? I'm not getting that ID. I should get here customer ID in the IntelliSense. I'm not sure why I'm not getting it. Am I writing something wrong? Let me read the error properly. Namespace issues, is it? Could not find implementation of dbset customer. Link you. Okay. Yes, I am in a console application. Yeah. You know what? When you're in MVC, etc., all that thing is happening by default. So right. That is so bad. And you know what? I selected Entity Framework Core. I have. Okay. I'm stuck. Okay. So bad this is. Interesting. 4.3. Okay. Okay, I'm just installing the LinkU package. Okay. Guys, I just in what happens in MVC is this is all there. So yeah, now EFCon. So what am I doing wrong here? Now there it is. One of the things which keeps me wondering is, so thank you very much everyone, because what happens in Entity Framework in MVC, right, you just have the LinkU package, right, and I created a console application. I just forgot about it. Now remember, this is core, .NET Core, so you need to go ahead and get everything from NuGet. You cannot add a reference here. If you see .NET Core, everything comes from NuGet, right? So for example, if you want to go ahead and create an MVC application, .NET new MVC, you get everything from online, you get your NuGet package. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for that. I really missed that part. So now OBJ update. So this is what I want to update here. Okay. So I'll say get me the first customer object from this, because definitely it is just one object, right? So what is that? Okay, let me make it var update. Don't want to get into create a list. Cannot apply to this expression. Okay. Oh, that's that bracket and that 0. Yeah, I know. No, that's the very stupid way of getting things. Fine. So guys, I'm so sorry for this. So first thing is, if you want to update, right, you'll get the object and then you will set whatever value you want to set here. For example, I want to go and set this to something like test, right? And remember, at this moment we just have that customer ID 2, right? We don't have any other record, so I've just made it 2. So we have this customer ID 2, and we want to change that Shiv to Shiva, must be. And again, obj update dot save changes. So obj update, ef context dot save changes. And the same for delete, you will say dot remove and same changes, right? So this will go and this will do an update at the backend. So if I run this, I'm so sorry for that link queue thing. It really got off my head. So this will go and this will select that object first thing. So that is that object you can see which has got selected. So currently it has this value Shiv, right? Then that we change this value and we say save changes, and that will go ahead and make this as Shiva, right? Right. So any questions here on this part? I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know, that link you thing just went off from my head. Okay, I have a question here. How can we do locking concurrency? Okay, good question. I'll take this question in a while. Any other questions on how to do an update, how to do a delete, how to do a select by using link queue, and then insert we already saw. Concurrency, yeah. I'll take the concurrency question. I'll take that. Any other questions here on especially the syntax part? It's all like your Entity Framework 6. If you have done Entity Framework 6, this is all out there. Same thing. Right. So there is a question here, how does locking work in this, or how does concurrency work in this? So remember that Entity Framework is a disconnected kind of an architecture. Disconnected means, for example, first thing, let us clarify. At the end of the day, Entity Framework works on SQL Server. Entity Framework works on SQL Server. So you have to understand the SQL Server locking as well. And before that, you have to understand two things. You have to understand there are two ways of doing locking, or I'll say two ways of handling concurrency. One is called as the optimistic locking, and the other one is called as the pessimistic locking. So anyone here, what is optimistic and pessimistic? We have a question here. It's a private question to me, that how is concurrency handled? So point number one, anyone here who has an idea of optimistic concurrency and pessimistic concurrency? Yes. What do you mean by optimistic locking, and what do you mean by pessimistic locking? Yes, and also if any other questions, I'm ready to take those questions as well. Guys, I'm going to go and extend this class again next week also, because I'm planning to cover repository pattern and some other things. So next week also I'm going to go and continue this class. I was planning to wrap in 2 sessions, but I thought that I will go more in depth. I will talk about locking. I will talk about concurrency. We'll talk about how to go and update the database structure and so on, right? Yes, lazy loading. Let me put all the topics here, guys. Don't worry. The more you put the topics, the more you become better. So I can put it here. Lazy loading. Yes, that is one. Connection re-silence. That's a nice name, but it's a very simple concept. I put it out here, Sunny. Yeah, but I feel this is very important. Optimistic and pessimistic locking. Most important part. I would like to spend some time here. How many of you guys have watched my SQL Server videos? In my SQL Server video, recently I have shown transactions and logs. I did a lot of hard work for that video, guys. It's like a 1.5 hour video, which talks about isolation level, which talks about read committed, read uncommitted, phantom rows, dirty reads. Any one of you guys have watched that video? I have uploaded like 2 weeks back. Guys, remember, a lot of these videos which we are uploading, it takes a lot of hard work. A lot of other expert people also give me suggestions, and then we create that video. So it's not just me learning. There are other MVPs who support me. They make me explain that concept, because sometimes as a human, I don't understand all of things, right? So I take help of them. I take help of a lot of Microsoft people who are from the core SQL Server team, or let's say if I'm doing Angular, I take help directly from the core Angular team as well. So I have that networking. So when we put out that video out there, it must be like 1 week of learning only of that topic, with all those diagrams, everything coming at place, those examples to be perfect, right? So please take at least like go ahead. It's a 1.5 hour video. I understand it will take a lot of time for you to read. Just see 15 minutes, right? No one has seen that video of pessimistic locking. This one, okay. Yeah, thank you, Sunny. You saw that. So but I can see that we have 25 people in this room now. Nobody saw that. I'm not sure. So guys, there are two things. One is optimistic concurrency. Another one is pessimistic concurrency. Optimistic means in optimistic locking, there is no locking. The first point is concurrency issue happens only when 99% it happens only when you are doing an update. Means if you have an existing record, and in that existing record, if two people try to update the same time, that's where maximum the concurrency happens. Concurrency issue also happens during the insert also. Okay, insert also concurrency issue happens, but definitely during the update is the maximum time the concurrency issue happens, right? Now so one is we have optimistic locking, right? Optimistic concurrency. In optimistic concurrency, there is no lock. What we do is that before updating, we just check for the old values and the new values. So we just check for old values is equal to new values. Means what? When I fetch the record, for example, at this moment, let us say over here, this is how it works. You can see I have this statement. So my entity framework goes ahead and fetches this record, right? So at this time, this value is Shiva. So the current record value inside the table is in the table is Shiva. I have fetched the value. Now, when I go to update, I will first check, is the value still Shiva? If the value is not Shiva and somebody else has changed it to something else, right? That means that somebody else has changed the value and we should throw up an exception. So optimistic concurrency is nothing but you check the last updated date and time, or you check the actual values or whatever, right? This is called as optimistic locking. This is not real locking. It is, you can think about that. It is before update, you are doing a read. You can say it is read before a write. So before you write, you do a read, you compare it, and then you decide you want to update or not, right? This is optimistic locking. Pessimistic means it is real locking. Means in the SQL server, I go and I say, oh, this row, lock it by using serializable isolation level. This row, lock it by using update lock. So that is the pessimistic locking cannot happen. Can happen only through the RDBMS. That means Oracle only knows how to lock his own tables. SQL Server knows how to lock his rows, right? So that is called as pessimistic locking. Whenever you are working in a disconnected architecture like ADO.NET dataset, or if you are working in entity framework, in this case, what happens? For example, look at this case here. I fetch the value, right? And at this moment, I have my cursor is waiting out here. Must be the user is updating the value, right? And at this time, this entity framework has no idea that somebody can go and change in the RDBMS. So somebody can go out here and he can do an edit, and he can go and say, oh, this is some new record. You can see now, because there is no lock, right? You can see I went ahead, I updated it, and now what will happen is this guy will go and update it happily, and we have a problem here, right? So yes, if you see now, the value has changed, but the problem is there was a complete silence. I mean, like, that user updated, this user also updated thinking that it's an old value, but it's actually some other value, right? So this kind of confusion should not happen, right? So for that, in entity framework, we have optimistic locking, or I will say rather, it is very difficult to do pessimistic locking through EF. You can do it, guys, you can do it, but I'm saying it is difficult to do. So more like from entity framework, it is more of optimistic locking. So for optimistic locking, what you will do is you will go ahead and you will put this concurrency check. So I will say that, let's say on the name, I'm putting a concurrency check. So I'm saying that whenever you go to the SQL server to update through entity framework, check that the customer name is the same old value. If it is not the old value, please throw up exception. Right now, you can see, let us do something like this. Let us say currently in the database, the name is Shiv, and I'm trying to change it to Shiva. Now let us see what happens. So this is what it is. It goes here and it fetches this record, right? At this moment, this is value Shiv. The Visual Studio changes this value to Shiva, but now he does not hit save changes. In other words, still in SQL Server, still the value is Shiv, right? Now let us assume that some other user comes here. You can think about this other user at this moment. Let's think about the DBA. The DBA comes here and changes this to test-t. Now you can see here, this I have changed to test-t, and this he has changed to Shiva. He is saying he is thinking that, oh, the old value is Shiv, right? But actually the value has changed, right? So now in this case, I expect Entity Framework to throw up exception. So you can see now there is an exception here, and this is so nice to see. It says exception of DB update concurrency, right? So just to answer your question, Entity Framework does optimistic locking. You can do a pessimistic locking, but there are different ways to do it, and it is it is not straightforward. Did we get, guys, any questions on this optimistic locking? Now what you can do is, when you get this exception, you can put a nice try catch. You can give an alert to the end user saying that the values have changed. Are you sure you still want to update? And then you can do a reread, read the values again, and then again try to send an update. So here you can prompt the user with the action saying that something is wrong. Are you sure you want to still continue? Any questions on optimistic concurrency? If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type on the chat. Or if any other questions, which we have covered till now. So today we covered code first. We covered one-to-many relationship. We covered one-to-one relationship. We also saw how to do a select, update, and delete. We also looked into optimistic concurrency. Okay, so there is a question here, but how is this feasible? Like if I have 10 columns, then do I need to go ahead on put in all columns, right? So that is one question. Also, I can see that Vijay also has asked the same question. How to do concurrency for multiple columns? Means if you have 10 columns, it does not look feasible to go ahead and put concurrency check on a lot of columns, right? Yes, how we can do? Anyone here? I'm sure that people who have worked with ADO.NET dataset, rather than putting concurrency check on every column, you will create one column which is, yes, anyone? I hope everybody got the question, right? The question is that I want to go ahead and timestamp. So nice, Vijay. Yeah, that's right. So what you will do is that you will actually just track only one column, like timestamp, you will put it, right? And that timestamp is on which you will go and you will just do concurrency check. That's it. Right, so if you remember in our SQL Server, we have this column which is of which you can go ahead and you can use the timestamp. The timestamp is not timestamp, right? It just says that when last it was updated. So this one. So you create a timestamp column, and only on that timestamp column you go and say concurrency check. This one. That's it. Okay, so you don't have to do on the multiple columns. Any questions here? Yes. So I can see there is a question here, but still, what if I want to do pessimistic locking? Nice question. Let me address this. Means what, I'm using Entity Framework and I want to still do pessimistic locking. Pessimistic locking means hard locking, means locking on the actual record, right? First thing, the good news is that by default, SQL Server does pessimistic locking on update. Okay, in other words, now look at this. Means I'm going to go and open up two new query window out here. So let's say I'm doing an update. Now remember, at the end of the day, when I fire my Entity Framework queries, when I go and say update, save changes, and so on, at the end of the day, he actually goes and executes SQL query internally. This is very important here. So if you see for now, if you see, if I go and run this, right? Let me run my SQL profiler. The best way to understand entity framework is keep running entity framework and keep running your SQL profiler. So SQL profiler, I hope everybody understands. SQL profiler is nothing but it is a tool which helps you to track, what kind of SQLs are getting fired on SQL Server, or what kind of events are happening on SQL Server. So you can see now I've fired my SQL profiler at the back end. And if I go and if I run this, so if I say save changes out here, right, you will see that in the SQL profiler, he must have caught that statement, right? So you can see here SQL and so that was a select. Let me just go and paste this. So let me go and paste this on the notepad. And you can see here very clearly, what is he doing here? He's saying that update this table name, set this customer name, and the customer name should be equal to P2. What is this P2? This P2 is the old value. You can see testy. So you can see now internally what he's doing is this is like saying update table name, set the value to Shiva, where customer name is equal to the old value testy, and definitely the ID is there, right? So you can see now I'm just trying to just make that sentence more reasonable to you. So what he is doing is he's saying set customer name is equal to the new value only if the customer name is equal to the. So you can see internally that optimistic concurrency is nothing but it is a simple check. Let me know, everyone following this? Quite easy. Okay, so that's important. So now, okay, now coming back here, okay, the pessimistic locking. So as I've said, pessimistic locking happens through SQL Server, right? So now let us say I'm update TBL customer name, update table. So the SQLs are getting fired at the back end. Update TBL customer, set, what is it? Let's say I want to set the customer name is equal to something new, where customer ID is equal to 2, right? So you can see here I'm having the simple update query. Now remember, by default, when you fire an update query, when you are actually executing an update query, there is already a lock at the backend. So when update queries are fired, the locks are always there, right? So in other words, for example, let me go ahead and begin a transaction here so that we can track this more closely. So begin tran, and what I will do is I will roll back this tran. So I'll go and I'll roll back this transaction. In other words, I will never be committing it, right? And what I will do is I will go ahead here and wait. Let's put a delay out here. Delay, what is that? How do you put a delay? I forgot the syntax. So let me just show you how this pessimistic works, and then we can see. What is that wait delay in SQL? I'm so sorry for this, Google. Wait for, yeah, wait for. I just forget syntaxes. Wait for. So what I will do now here is I will go ahead here and I will say wait for. So I think it's 00:00. Let's see the syntax. Wait for 00:00:00. So hour, minutes, and seconds. So hour, minutes, and seconds. So basically now I'm waiting here for let's say 20 seconds. Wait for delay, and it's a string. I'm sorry for this. Okay, now let me tell you why I'm doing all this thing out here. Now look at this. This is a simple update, right? I'm trying to set this customer ID to some value, some new. right? And I'm delaying it for 20 seconds. And after 20 seconds, I'm rolling back. Means in other words, this customer name never becomes some new. I hope everybody is understanding this code. I'm starting up a transaction. I am rolling back the transaction and I'm waiting for 20 seconds. So in other words, if I execute this, if you see here, for example, if you see at this moment, the value is something, Shiv something right out here. Okay. So if I execute this, this will execute for 20 seconds and it will just wait. Okay. Now think about it. At the same time, if somebody goes and does a select. So what if somebody goes and says select star from TBL customer and specifically goes and selects the same record. Customer ID is equal to 2. Right. So assume now you can see I'm going to go and hit over here, update. You can see now this is going in a, this is in a wait mode. You can see down below executing query. Now I try to go and try to do a select, and you can see, if you see at this moment, it is not showing me that uncommitted record. You can see I've done a select out here, but this at this moment, this some new has fired, but he never showed me that uncommitted record, right? I hope everybody has understood this, right? You can see here, when I fire this query, this data changes from this data, some, Shiva to something, some new internally, and after that he reverts back. But when I'm firing this query, I don't find that. I don't see any uncommitted records, right? But what if you want to see uncommitted records? Then what you will do? You will say here set transaction isolation level, and you will say read uncommitted. If you do this, what will happen is now you will see uncommitted records also. Means now watch this. Now I will go here, I will execute this, and I will say now do a execute. Can you see some new? You can see now some new is still not committed, but that select is able to read it. So I can see data which is uncommitted, right? Okay. And then after some time, this some new, after 20 seconds, will again change back to, you can see some other value, the old value, right? This is called as repeatable read. Repeatable read means this is a problem where every time you do a select, something else comes up. Okay. What I mean is that basically if you use isolation level and if you use your transactions right, you can go ahead and set up locking pessimistically. So what people do in entity framework is, now coming to entity framework, how do we, this is all via SQL, right? So via SQL, this is all default. I go ahead, I update it, he sees the value, I can put an exclusive lock if I want, right? And so on, right? So what they do through entity framework is they create an isolation level. So in other words, we go ahead here and we write such kind of a code. So you can see here, this is a sample code out here. You will start a transaction scope and you will define read committed or read uncommitted or serializable. If you go ahead here and define as serializable, that means it becomes a pessimistic lock. You have issued to the SQL server that this is a pessimistic lock and the other people should not be able to do a select. So if you want to do pessimistic locking via entity framework, you need to use isolation level. Isolation level means how far is one transaction isolated from another transaction, right? Any questions, guys? How to go and do pessimistic locking with entity framework? You have to use isolation level, and this isolation level internally translates to SQL Server isolation level. So there is no worry to us. Or else use optimistic locking. So any questions on the locking part? Very important topic, huh, guys? This is a very important topic. I understand that it is a very boring topic, but the most important topic. I would suggest to please go and watch the SQL Server transaction and locks video. It's a big video, but if you go and have a look, I've explained that ACID principles. I've explained isolation level. I have shown a deadlock, right? Yeah. Any questions, guys, on optimistic locking and pessimistic locking using entity framework? If you have any questions, you can put down on the chat. I'll give a wait for 1 or 2 minutes and let's see if there are any questions. Let me see if any questions I have missed from the top. Yeah, okay. Okay, can you take up a class of transaction and logs? Yeah, must be. If you can send a mail, I can take up a 1 hour lecture only on transactions and logs. Guys, remember at the end of the day, it is not about that you know Angular 7 or 8, you know what comes up. It is not about that you know MVC core 3 or 4. Very important is fundamentals. Do you know abstract classes? Do you know interfaces? Do you know design patterns? Do you know locking? Do you know the database part well? Do you know the design well? This is maturity, what you call it, right? So I would suggest please go and try to be fundamentally strong. Upgrading to Angular or upgrading to React is, if you can come to my lectures, I will make it in one day. But you cannot teach a person all these basic concepts. Today I must have explained isolation level, but I know that it must have got bouncers for a lot of people. But this is fundamental. You know, if you are using a multi-user environment, you should know when to lock, when to unlock, right? Okay, so this is good. Now, I would like to also discuss, so I see no questions. Remember, I talked about CQRS in the previous class. Did I talk about CQRS? Can anyone comment out here about CQRS? Did I talk about CQRS pattern and how it is related to entity framework? I'm not sure. Can anyone just comment and tell me that we discussed about CQRS or we did not discuss? I don't remember at this moment. CQRS. Did we discuss this terminology? Very important, because a lot of people feel that entity framework is slow because of this. Okay, so we discussed about CQRS, so that is good. So guys, please understand, follow CQRS concept when you're doing entity framework. Insert, update, and delete. Do not have a query plan. When you're doing an update, when you're doing an insert, when you're doing a delete, there is nothing called as performance from SQL Server perspective directly, right? So go ahead and use entity framework. But when you do a select, do not use the entity framework same structure. In other words, look at this. Think about it. This customer was, this is customer class. And inside this, we have this address collection. So one customer has multiple address, right? Now, if you want to load 1 million record, this structure, first you fill customer, again you go and fire a select and get the addresses. This is sick, right? It will take a lot of time. So rather than that, what you will do is you will create a separate class, which is a DTO. So you can say this is customer address DTO, flat class. And in this, you will say, okay, this will have customer code. A lot of people also call these classes as reporting classes. Address 1. So you can see this class out here is a flat class which has both customer properties also and address class properties also. Now go ahead, write a very nice SQL with inner join, left join, put proper cluster indexes, and just fill this class out here and give it to your UI. Also, you can go unorthodox. You can say that why to even go and fill double, right? Just go ahead and expose the DB set to your report set, or must be have a data set and just expose it. That is also fine. So when you're talking about reading, do not try to go through one more layer. If you're going to go through one more layer like entity framework, you will have problems. So entity framework use only for crude application. This save changes. Create. That is what the CQRS is. Command. Command means use only for create, update, and delete. And you will be happy with entity framework. Right, I just want to make that point. It's a very important point. A lot of people try to use the same class to create a report, and it does not work. Yes, any questions, any queries? Okay, so guys, we have some more topics out here. What I will do is today, let me just start with repository pattern, because I feel that repository pattern is very much connected with entity framework, right? And then in the next class, I will complete the repository pattern. We have more 15-20 minutes, and let us talk about this repository pattern. So guys, what is repository pattern? Anyone here? What is the use of repository pattern? How many of you guys have used repository pattern? I'm sure every second person has used the repository pattern. So how many of you guys have used repository pattern, unit of work, and what is the biggest benefit of repository pattern? What is the biggest benefit of having a repository pattern? Loose coupling. So I can see the answer, loose coupling. Anything else? Okay, so loose coupling I can do by a lot of things, right? I can put an interface, I can have Unity application block. If I want to loose couple two classes, there are other ways of doing it. But what is that loose coupling that repository pattern provides? We can have DB independent code. Okay, DB independent code, ease of testing. Okay, so that's nice. I can see a lot of people talking out here. So guys, let me talk about what exactly everyone is saying. So now what really happens is, or what really has been happening till now. First thing I would like to tell everyone here, definitely I like design pattern a lot. You will see a lot of my videos on design pattern, as well as I am one of those strong believers of design pattern, but I'm against using design patterns where you do not have a project budget. As an architect, it is very important whenever you go for architecting any application, right? It is very important. If you don't have a proper budget, and if you try to just put all that patterns inside it, your project will probably never fly. So always see that you have the appropriate budget to put this all best practices and everything, right? So what I do is that whenever I start architecting every project, right, I do ensure that the budget justifies that architecture. Very important this is, okay? But let me talk, like I can see a lot of answers which are almost right. Ease of testing, implements caching, and so on, right? So if you see what is happening is, so you have your object-oriented world out here, right? And these objects are getting saved via this, this DAL layer, right? So let's say, now remember, guys, at the end, at the back end, normally people will have their only one RDBMS. If suppose, like, let's say I start using MongoDB, I will not change it to Oracle anytime ahead. If I start using SQL Server, it is very difficult. I will change it to MongoDB. Once data starts accumulating in a specific database, right, it's very rare that people start changing from that database to another database. So remember that some people say that repository pattern helps us to decouple the RDBMS implementation. No, it does not, right? RDBMS normally in enterprise applications do not change. But what happens is, to connect to this RDBMS, lot of data access layer technology Microsoft provides. For example, if you remember in the initial good old days, we had this ADO.NET. It is still there, I'm sure. Then we have, after ADO.NET in 2008, 2009, they came up with this enterprise application blocks, which was coming from Microsoft practices. Well, before ADO, there was ODBC, OLEDB. I will not go into that. RDO, if you are coming from the old VB6 school, you will find that every time they always try to create new kind of data access layer technologies, right? Now we have also entity framework. In between, we had LinkCube. So now what happens is, like at this moment, I have an old project which is in ADO.NET. I want to start using entity framework, all the features of entity framework. But my code is so much tied up with ADO.NET that I cannot really do this migration out to entity framework. It is difficult. So as someone said, first is loose coupling, right? So basically what we do is that we create a repository here at the end. And we say that you talk to this repository, and this repository is now using ADO, but tomorrow you can go and use entity framework, right? Or tomorrow you can use something else. So this is where the repository is. And also someone says it is good for implementing caching. Absolutely. So now a lot of common things I can do in repository. I can do validation checks. I can do what you call caching, as someone said, right? And a lot of common code, common things, which you're doing across the data access layer, you can do it right over here, right? So, and as someone also said, testing. Yes. Now what I can do is I can go to this repository and fake it out and say that, okay, repository, don't even think there is AD or anything, right? And I can start testing it. Okay, so this layer out here is like a very abstract layer, and which says at the back end you can have entity framework, at the back end you can have ADO, at the back end you can have whatever you wish, right? Now the next question which I want to ask everyone here, and this is also discussed online. Some people say that repository, if you're doing entity framework, do not use repository pattern. Then there are some architects who say no, like it's either entity framework, either ADO.NET, still use repository. What is your call in this? I want this answer. Like some people say that, okay, if it is entity framework, it is already implementing repository pattern. Why do you have to again go ahead and create one more repository? And then there are some people who say no, like what tomorrow if entity framework changes, you let us go ahead and put one more wrapper on the top of EF. So what is your call in this? That if you're using entity framework, should we use repository pattern? Is it really worth? I explained the concept of repository here, but there is an online discussion and a debate saying that we should use repository or we should not use repository for entity framework. I can understand what do you call as if it is ADO.NET, I can understand it, but for entity framework, how it goes. So I can see like some out here say we should not use repository for entity framework. Okay, right. So that is one part I can understand. So here it is, guys. First is like yes. Okay, a lot of people are saying yes. Some people, you know, they're sending me private messages. You can go and put on the global chat. Everybody should see your message as well, right? So some people who have said no, they have said no because they think that repository is more of a over architecting or an anti-pattern, right? So here is the thing, guys. Definitely, like if you don't have the budget, if you are unnecessarily tomorrow, let's say it's a small project. It is not an enterprise project. You want to start today and it is going to be used for some small things. Go ahead. Do not use repository pattern. Do not use any pattern. Just use a simple 3-layer architecture and complete your project, right? But if you think tomorrow, like this project's life is going to be like 5, 6 years, 6, 7 years, right? Believe me, this entity framework will also change into something else tomorrow. So at that time, it is very difficult to go and change the data access layer technology, right? So yes, I think if you're using entity framework also, you should still use repository, right? So now coming here, the first part is to create a proper repository, to implement a proper repository pattern. The most important thing we should start off with is the design of the repository pattern. Means in other words, I can think about the interface. So as we said that the client who is actually accessing the repository, right, should have a very, very generic interface, right? So first let us go ahead and create or design the interface of the repository. So you can see here I'm saying interface I repository. Also, I saw very, very nice comment here that, sir, we should try to use something from GitHub. So nice. It's right. Everybody, you know, in their project are creating repository pattern again and again and again, and everybody has the same way of doing things. Please go ahead, go to your GitHub. There are a lot of good repository pattern code which are available. You can use one of them, right? So I agree to that. Coding repository again and again, it does not look good, right? So I will just explain the code here. Definitely this code is not something you should use in production. You can go ahead and use some repository pattern like we have the Exalc. Exalc is one very good repository of C#, you know, or repository pattern on GitHub, which almost it worked for me for entity framework, for LinkU, for SQL Server, for Azure, for everything at the backend, right? But the repository pattern design, first thing, let us talk about it. So we'll say here, okay, this is a repository pattern interface. It will have an add method. Let's say this will add something to the database. It will have a search, so it will search something, right? So it will have an update. Let's do an update first, like update must be update method, right? But now at the end of the day, when you say you want to go and add it to a database, if you want to add customer, if you want to add supplier, it's very essential over here that this add should have customer inside it, isn't it? If you say you want to do a search, then you will say, okay, list of customer search, right? So but now the problem out here is that I will end up with creating a lot of interfaces. So I will have one I repository for customer, and then I will have one I repository for supplier, and so on, right? So how should I design my repository? I can see that a lot of people are already doing repository pattern out here. So how can I overcome this problem? Rather than creating lot of interfaces, you use generics. Yes, absolutely. That's nice to see, Suyat. So I will say that this will be any model generics. You know, a lot of people put this as T, but I have to just make sure that you understand it. I will just say any model, right? So now I will say here, this is the add of any model. This is the search of any model. So I can have any model. I can have supplier, I can have customer, I can have anything, right? So you can see now, I can say like this. So this is repository of any model. I will go and I will say, okay, now let me create a repository of customer, right? So customer, I'll say, okay, implement I repository, and I'll say, okay, now use customer, right? So that is, you can see now this is a customer repository pattern. In the same way, I can say, okay, now go ahead and say repository of supplier, repository of this, right? So by using generics, this is also called as a generic repository pattern. So generic repository pattern. So by using generics, you know, what happens is I can use this interface now for customer, supplier, accounts, journals, or whatever I wish, right? Any questions, guys, on this interface? This is the most important part. If you make a mistake here in this design, then your whole repository pattern is going up and down. Any questions on this interface? A lot of people like to give the name here as T. Go ahead, T. T means any template, any model, any class, any object. Now, please note, you should also put here, this T is not integer. This T is not a number. This T is not a string. This T is a class. It's an object. It's a model, right? So at least say that where T is a class, so that at least there is some qualifier where T, okay, T is a class, right? Because T cannot be like anything. It has to be at least a class, right? So guys, this is the start of repository pattern. Now it's already 1.5 hours. Let me not stretch it. So what we'll do is in the next lecture, we will try to complete the repository pattern first. And this repository pattern, I will connect using ADO.NET, as well as I will connect using the entity framework. So we'll see that how this whole thing works. Also, we'll try to implement unit of work. So the next class, we will just dedicate towards repository pattern, because when you talk about entity framework, this is a very important concept, right? And also there are some other questions, not in this class, must be in the next class. I can address this, lazy loading, connection resilience, and so on, right? So guys, today it's 1.5 hours. Any questions in today's class? So in today's class, we have completed database first, CQRS, code first. Sorry, we completed code first, CQRS, one-to-many relationship by using the class convention, by using the model builder. We did optimistic concurrency. We also saw how to do pessimistic locking, right? And so on, right? Okay. So Lakshmi ma'am, just send me an email, you know, if you can send me an email, I will try to give you the links. I can give you the exact links. Right. So guys, just updating you, like, you know, this past week I have uploaded one video which is related to Visual Studio integration with Angular. I'm not sure if you have watched that 1.5 hour video where I've explained how to integrate Angular with Visual Studio, right? In some of the past weeks, I have talked about a special video I made specifically for async versus threading, right? I would really suggest, you know, that watch all of these videos, because what I'm trying to do is, we do have a lot of networking at the back end with good people. All these good people who are working in companies, one of the things they don't do is they don't document anything. They will do project they will do the project, they will do everything. But when it comes to teaching, when it comes to go and documenting it and teaching someone, or going and sharing knowledge, either they are too busy, or either they have a lot of work, or either they don't have time, right? So we are meeting all of these guys. We know that, okay, this guy is good in locking, we just meet him. This guy is good in visual, he's blogging so much about Visual Studio integration, we talk with him, right? We talk with him. We already know some knowledge, but we get some exceptional knowledge from him. We take that, we create a document, and we present before you. So that's why the videos which are coming, for the past 4 or 5 months, we have ensured that the quality is up team and up prime. We will spend 1 week in doing the full POC and R&D before even we come out with the video. So I would suggest, with all that hard work we are putting in, please go and see whatever videos come out. We try to flash on Facebook. We try to flash on our Telegram channel. You can go and chat on Questpond as well. People can tell you what is the new video, what is coming up. We have Vishwanath sir, who is working on machine learning and other things. We are coming up now with data science with maths. Like a lot of people are talking about data science. We are exceptionally working with good people at the back end to come out with a math syllabus. And after that, you do in ML.NET, you do in Python or R, it is irrespective, right? So please go ahead and see all the videos, right? On all these sessions also, please try to attend. Unit testing, I will take it. Angular and EF, yes, I'll take that. I'll take unit testing, I like it, unit testing. And also there is unit testing videos you can watch. Angular, I will do unit testing, don't worry, Prashant. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Thanks for attending the session. Next week, again, Sunday, we will go ahead, we'll complete the repository pattern. And this week also, we are uploading some videos on data science. I am starting data science, so please, Log4j with Angular. Okay, that's Log4j can be with C#. I'm not sure if what is, okay, I'll take that. Okay. Thank you very much. Next week again. Thank you.